Hi guys, and welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia and I'm coming to you once again from the south of Germany. Today is Friday, it's the 20th of May 2020, and I'm so glad that you're joining me today to talk about some knitting and today also a little bit of spinning. So if you're watching for the very first time, then a huge welcome to you. I really hope that you will hopefully enjoy this podcast, and who knows, maybe you'll come back one day. And for those of you who are returning viewers, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back every week or so to listen to me ramble on about knitting, crochet, yarn, spinning, and anything related to those things. So apparently it is becoming a tradition that I'm recording these episodes on my Friday lunch breaks. Not sure how that happened, but it worked out really well today because we had a public holiday yesterday here in Germany. And while we are working, it seems like a lot of people aren't working because of the long weekend. So it is pretty quiet, and I thought I would record this episode. So as per usual, I don't do any show notes, but I have pretty good project pages on Ravelry, which you will always find linked right underneath each and every video. So if you have any questions regarding modifications that I've done, yarn, needle sizes, colorway names, all of that is always in my project pages. And more I've been trying to lay out my modifications on my knits more in detail, because then I don't have to talk about them in length on the podcast, because I think most of the time it isn't really that interesting unless you're really thinking about making something yourself, or unless, it is a life-changing thing. But changing a needle size and changing ribbing and all of that usually isn't that crazy interesting. Anyway, so if you have any questions, the link is down there, and you can always try to find your information before asking me, because I will be honest, I haven't been that good at replying to messages and comments and all of that. I am really sorry if you're one of those people who keeps on just getting like a little heart on your comment from me. It is because I do read them and I do really appreciate them. But I have just been a little bit burnt out on podcasting and just generally more tired lately, which, I mean, third trimester, I guess it is to be expected, but I am noticing that I have less energy sometimes, and the energy that I do have, I try to prioritize things that need to be done. And sadly, as much as I love reading all of your comments and messages, sometimes things like keeping the house running and all of that have to take priority, very sadly. Anyways, that was a lot of rambling to start with. Today I have some finished objects for you. I have some works in progress. I want to talk a little bit about spinning. I also have been kind of purging my already finished projects, so I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we will just see how it goes. So let us start with finished objects. So for finished objects, let's start with the thing that I'm wearing, because I am overheating as we speak. I'm incredibly hot, so I'm going to talk about this briefly and then I will take it off. So this is my finished no frills cardigan, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. I modified this quite a lot because I wanted it to be much shorter and also much less oversized than it is actually written to be in the pattern. So I can't really stand up and show it to you, but if I don't put in some photos here, you will find some photos again either in my Ravelry project pages or on my Instagram, which is at TheHappyKnittingPodcast. So yeah, I finished this thing, and you guys, I basically knit until I ran out of yarn, and this is the tiny amount of mohair yarn that I had left. I still have like half a skein of the lace weight merino yarn from Wollmeise that I held this mohair double with, but this is all I have left of my mohair. So what I have done, and I think I talked about this last week, is after knitting a quite substantial amount of the body, I then knit both of the sleeves. I made them like 3/4 length, which worked out really well. I'm really happy with this sleeve length. And then I just used whatever yarn I had left to finish off the body. So it hits me nicely at my hips, which is exactly what I wanted. It worked out really well. Again, like I said, I only had about, I think, 100 grams of mohair silk lace yarn. So I always knew that this wasn't going to go forever and ever, but I managed to get a garment out of it, which is great, especially because mohair tends to be on the pricey side, even though this is a commercial mohair. This is by Hansa Farm, which used to be called Fair Wool or Fair Alpaca. I've talked about this at length. I'm not sure, I don't have a label here with me too, so I'm sorry about that. But that is the mohair that I used, and I held it together with some Wollmeise lace, which is theoretically more like a light fingering weight yarn, and that was in the RH negative, RH positive, RH zero, the one with the blood groups, that colorway. I cannot remember it for the life of me, I'm so sorry. But anyways, this thing is done and I'm really happy with it. So while I tend to be very much a process knitter that really just enjoys the process of knitting, and I mean I care about the outcome, but I don't really knit to have a specific finished object. I kind of knit because I like knitting. This was something that I just really wanted to have in my wardrobe, like a cardigan that I can wear throughout my pregnancy, for breastfeeding, for all of these things, if they work out. So this was very much something that I wanted to be finished. The knitting itself, it was fun, but I mean, it is a cardigan that is obviously knit flat, or you can't stick it because it is a mohair and superwash yarn. So I had to do a lot of purling, and it wasn't the most exciting thing I've ever knit. But like I said, I'm really happy with the outcome. I've worn this a couple of times already. And yeah, it is exactly what I wanted. Here in Germany, the lockdown has been lifted quite substantially, so we've been able to go out more. And if you do want to go out for food, for example, though, this week you can only eat outside. So we were kind of lucky that we had somewhat good weather, but this was the perfect thing to throw over when we went out a couple of times. So it was perfect to test drive this cardigan, and yeah, it works really well. I expected this to be even warmer than it is. I mean, I am really warm right now, but in general, I thought this would just be crazy hot, sort of in the way that alpaca feels, but it's actually quite comfortable. It does slide off the shoulders a little bit sometimes, but it's not as bad as some of the other cardigans that I've knitted. So I find that to be a problem with most of the cardigans that I make, that they do fit. Like, there's nothing wrong with the fit, but obviously a sweater doesn't really slip off your shoulders, but a cardigan can. And this is very slippery with the mohair. Like, I tend to push up my sleeves, and with this it just comes down within a second, just because of the fabric. But it is really comfortable and soft, and I really like it, and the mohair isn't bothering me. So yeah, that is my no frills cardigan. Very happy to have it done, and yeah, it basically went straight into my daily wardrobe, and I think it's going to be in heavy rotation from now on. So I'm going to take it off because I am hot, and then we'll keep talking. So my only other finished object that I have for this week, you actually haven't seen as a work in progress, because it was another very quick knit that I whipped up, and it is adorable. It's this little baby hat, and some of you may recognize this yarn. I knit a pair of baby pants out of this maybe a month ago, and I had quite a bit of yarn left over, so I had always been planning to make something else with the yarn, and I picked this up the other day when I just needed a quick project and did another baby hat. So for this, again, I didn't really use a proper pattern, but what I did is I cast on 88 stitches. This is like a heavy fingering weight yarn. This yarn is by Lizme Knits in her Bern base, which I think she has discontinued, very sadly. It's just a very high twist. I think it's a merino 100% wool yarn. It is not super soft, but it's very it's a really nice yarn. It feels still woolly even though it is superwash. And I love this pumpkiny color. So I cast on 88 stitches and did a 2x2 rib, and then I decided, just for some interest, I would add in the stitch pattern from the Blueberry Waffles sock. There's also a violet waffles hat, which I think is the same pattern, but like I said, I just use the stitch pattern, which is from a free pattern. So it's just a very basic knit pearl texture, and the good thing is that it is super stretchy, so if I fold down the brim, like this is quite big, so I think it's going to fit for quite a while. And then while baby is small, we can just, roll up the ribbing, and it's more like a proper baby hat. It's really cute. And while I was knitting with it, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to like it because, again, the last baby hat that I made was out of a super soft sock yarn, and this is a bit more woolly and sturdy, but I think it's going to fit really well. So I'm happy I finished it. I used 2.5mm needles, I believe, which is a US size 1.5. And yeah, I just improvised some decreases, and it's very, very basic, but I love it. I would love it to show it to you together with the pants that I made because I think that's going to be adorable. But those are already at my parents' house because baby's things, pretty much like our things, are kind of spread between two places right now. We have about 8 weeks before we move, which is crazy. So yeah, this is done, just a very fast knit, and I might just bang out a couple more of these every now and then. This and baby socks is kind of the only thing that we really need anymore, so I'm not putting major pressure on myself to make anything specific for baby anymore. But it's fun to use up leftovers, and these little hats and socks and all of those things, they use just such tiny amounts of yarn. So yeah. Moving on to some works in progress. Let's start with this project, which is in a very fitting bag. This was from my birthday haul that I showed you last week. So I was knitting on these socks. Very, very bright neon socks that always don't show up as neon on the screen. At least they didn't for the last couple of videos that I made. But the first sock has been finished since I last talked to you, so this is just a plain vanilla sock. Cuff down, 2x2 ribbing, stockinette for the leg and the foot, and I put in my garter stitch heel, so you can just basically use any short row heel and turn it into a garter stitch heel by knitting the pearl stitches. And I tend to use the fish lips kiss heel and just do a garter stitch version. So the first sock is done, and I have started the second sock, and yesterday I turned the heel and knit a bit of the foot. So again, these aren't too far off being done, which is great because I love them. These are going to be for me. It's really funny. So many people see me knitting on this and ask me if I'm knitting something for baby. And these are people who know that I'm having a boy, first of all. And no, I'm just making neon crazy socks for myself because I can still make stuff for myself. So yeah, that is where we are with those 2.25mm needles, US size 1. And the yarn that I'm using is Bärenwolle in her barefoot sock base, which she sadly isn't dyeing anymore. And this used to be the Disco Nights colorway, and it is very fun, and I think it goes very well with my bag. Next up, I am really proud to say that I actually finally picked up those cabled socks again that I had kind of ignored for a while. So the socks that I'm talking about are the Curiosity and Opportunity socks, I believe they're called, by Joji Locatelli. And they're kind of very full-on cable socks, and I didn't put it on a sock blocker once again. But I have finished the first sock, you guys. I finally sat down the other day. I think I was about here when I picked them up. And I finished the first sock. So I'm very happy with these. I'm sorry I'm showing these to you very awkwardly and unprofessionally, especially because there are sock blockers right there. But let's just ignore that and make this goofy instead. So I have finished the very first sock, and in an effort to not get second sock syndrome, I have finished the cuff of the second sock. So really I just need to sit down and start working on the patterning once again. The yarn that I am using is this yarn, which is a commercial yarn. This is one of Regia's premium sock yarns. So I think they came out with a couple of different sock yarns, I don't know, maybe a year ago. So this is their premium silk sock yarn. So it's a wool, nylon and silk blend. This is color number 32, which I believe is called salmon. I'm not sure why they don't just write that on the tags. They also have like a yak base, which I really want to try, and I think they came out with an alpaca base somewhat recently, so I haven't tried those. This is my first time knitting with this sock yarn, and I am quite enjoying it. I am kind of regretting my color choice because I'm kind of bored of it. And I had a pair of pattern socks, actually a pair of monkey socks, out of a very, very similar colorways that I wore for years and years. So somehow these just remind me of those, and yeah, I'm not super crazy about this color, but this was out of stash. So if you don't know, I'm still trying to knit as much stash as I possibly can leading up to becoming a mom, essentially. So this is a ball of yarn out of my stash, and yeah, I am making progress at last. And again, I am using 2.25 millimeter needles, but because it is a cable sock, I am following, I think, the medium size stitch count, which is slightly more than my usual 64 stitches, because of course the cables do tend to draw in the sock a little bit. So yeah, that is it in terms of projects that you've already seen. But I have also tried something new. So yesterday I had a bit of a cast on party and I failed epically. So I had some linen yarn in my stash, some beautiful linen yarn that I got from, I think, Lithuania, from an Etsy store called Yarn Stories. So I knit a little swatch and I washed it and it came out quite nicely. I do really like the idea of knitting with linen. And I decided to just cast on a top that I would just make up myself. And the thing is that I really like the idea of linen. I like what other people make with linen. But I think I have to finally admit to myself that I don't like knitting with linen. So I started this entire garment and did all these things and was fading and all of that. But it was killing my hands. And again, I love the idea of linen. I was kind of aiming for a loose top, something cropped that I could just wear over a tank top and it would be really pretty and possibly even useful. But yeah, the linen just doesn't love me. So in the end, I ripped it all out, gave the yarn away, and this is all we have left. And then I had a bit of a, I may have had a bit of a hissy fit, but I decided to cast on something else instead. And again, my time is somewhat limited. I know that my knitting time will be reduced quite a lot very soon, so I'm trying to actually work on the things that I want to work on and not force myself to work on something I don't enjoy. And I really don't want to get like carpal tunnel or anything. So I started a very different project, even though the swatch looks kind of similar in color. So you may remember that a couple of episodes ago I talked about a couple of sweaters that I felted, and why am I dropping everything? And one of those sweaters, I was really, really sad about ruining it because it was this oversized sweater that was perfect for pregnancy and I loved it. It was super comfy. And to console myself, I had ordered some new yarn to knit myself a new oversized sweater. And I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted. I wanted it to be another sort of raglan top-down textured sweater, but this time I didn't want to design anything myself. So I looked at a couple of patterns, and in the end I decided to go with the Cotton Sky sweater by Vera Valimaki, which that came out really, really recently. I think in the beginning of May, if not the end of April. So it's a very new pattern, and it is essentially a DK weight sweater, top down, with short rows, with moss stitch down the front and back. So it was exactly what I wanted. So I swatched and I got perfect gauge, which was great. And this is where we are. So again, it is a top-down sweater, so you can see here the cast on. I did a couple of modifications because I always do, so I'm doing a 1x1 rib instead of a twisted rib. And the sweater has these panels of moss stitch, which, yes, I mean, knitting an entire sweater in moss stitch is going to be a bit of a labor of love. It's not going to be that relaxing because, well, it's essentially like a lot of pearls and you have to be careful to not mess up the pattern, but I do really like the look of moss stitch, and with this yarn that just has these light speckles, I think it's going to turn out really well. It also just has some really nice details, like the way the increases are done, and in the pattern the sleeves are completely knit in reverse stockinette, but I decided to turn it around, so I'm knitting mine just in plain stockinette, which was quite easy to do. And really, because I'm doing helical knitting, I'm not carrying any of the yarns visibly inside. This could be reversible. If I kind of take care of how I weave in my ends, I think I could wear this sweater both way around and see what I like better. So that's kind of an added bonus. So I have finished the short rows. There are quite a bit of short rows, and now I'm just working in the round until it is time to split for the sleeves. And the yarn that I am using is from Das Mojaf with Sabrina. This is in her Draco base in the GLaDOS colorway, which I believe she just sent out an email a couple of weeks ago saying that this is one of the colorways that she is discontinuing, which is very sad, but makes me very happy that I got myself a sweater quantity before she discontinued it. So the only thing I kind of messed up is I wanted to cast on really badly, so I have 4 skeins of this DK weight yarn, and I only caked up 2 to get started. I always knew that I was going to alternate skeins, but I started with 1 skein for like the short row section, because doing the short rows and alternating skeins at the same time would be a bit of a nightmare. And when it came to adding in the second skein, I realized that this second skein, you can probably tell, is much darker than the first skein. So I figured, well, I might as well wind my other 2 skeins and find a skein that is more similar to the first, and then kind of fade them in together, because I don't want a line or anything. And it turns out that 3 of the skeins were very similar, and I had started with the 1 skein that was a lot lighter. So I was a little bit worried that you would see a line, even though I am alternating skeins now, just like that this very top bit would be a bit too light compared to the rest. But you know what, I think it's going to be fine. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it anyways. There was no way I was ripping back. And you can maybe tell, like, down here it's lighter than up here, but all in all, I think it's going to be fine. And again, the moss stitch does kind of obscure a lot of like the tiny things anyways, which I think is a good thing also, because this is a very light sweater in terms of color, and I'm going to be like carrying a baby, which probably isn't the best idea to do with a very sort of light sweater that gets stained very easily. But I think with this moss stitch and all of that, it might actually kind of make it more suitable for every day. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I barely ever knit garments in DK weight, or just generally thicker weight yarns. So this feels like it's going quite fast. This is a superwash yarn, it's a superwash merino. So it's going to be very easy to take care of and handle. And I want this to be oversized, so I haven't decided if I'm going to do the 40-inch or the 44-inch size, which would give me 4 or 8 inches of positive ease respectively. So I think I will decide that later. Maybe I'll do like an in-between. Maybe I'll fudge it and do like a 42-inch. But it is a superwash yarn, so I know with just wearing and blocking and all of that, it's most likely going to be growing a little bit anyways. I mean, I did block my swatch, so my swatch has been measured after it's been washed. But I mean, this is going to be a little bit more of a heavy garment, because it does have like 450 grams of yarn in it. So a finished garment might behave a little bit differently than like a tiny swatch might. But I think it's going to be really handy, and I can just throw it in the washing machine and not worry about it. And yeah, I'm very excited about this. Oh, and I went down in needle size, as I always do pretty much, because I know that I am a looser knitter than most people. So I am knitting this on a 3.5 millimeter US size 4 needle, in case anyone is interested. So that is my sweater, and that is it in terms of what I've been working on regarding my knitting. This week I don't have any acquisitions, which is a good thing because I think we all remember the ton of yarny things that I showed you last week. But my sister actually made me a project bag for my birthday, so isn't this awesome? She had promised to make me a drawstring bag because she does so every now and then for, I don't know, 2 years, and we kind of tend to not pressure each other into making each other stuff. So if she asks for a pair of socks, she knows that it might take a half a year or something to get it, and the same thing applies to her sewing. But she surprised me with this on my birthday, and this is just the most humongous drawstring bag I have ever seen. So I just wanted to show it to you very quickly. It's canvas, but it's kind of a very light canvas, so she's lined it, and it is huge. Like, I have 4 giant cakes of DK weight yarn in there, as well as a pattern, and it is like not even half full. So this is a huge bag, which I think is going to be very handy for either like blanket projects or sweater projects, or possibly even when I travel, sometimes I like to put more than one project into a bag. So I love this. I'm very, very happy with this. So that is, I guess, kind of an acquisition for this week. And before we talk about spinning, which I want to leave somewhat at the end because I realize not everyone is interested about spinning, I wanted to quickly kind of talk about what I've been doing this week in terms of my already existing knitting projects. So, I talk about storing my knits every now and then, and I have a pretty good system with my socks. They all live in a giant plastic tub with a lid because I'm not risking anything getting to my socks. And with my garments, I tend to only have those garments out that are somewhat season appropriate. So, for example, right now, all of my really thick sort of colorwork sweaters that I only wear in really cold, like autumn and winter, they are all packed away in a big, huge vacuum bag, so they are safe. And the only thing that I kind of don't take care as much with is my shawls. So I have shawls in a couple of different places, and I do have them with like moth proofing and all the little things that you can do to keep bugs away. And I'm less worried about moths actually than I am about carpet beetles, because we do get them here and they don't do a lot of damage, but still, you never know. But this week, I think I'm trying to nest, but I can't because I know that we're moving. So I went through some of the knitwear, some of the shawls and scarves and accessories that we have, and I actually purged a lot of it. So while it felt really, really hard, I've decided to give away a lot of my shawls because I just don't even wear them. I have kind of stopped wearing shawls. And I only have very few that I still wear all the time, and I think my taste has just changed a little bit. And just generally, I feel like when I first started recording and designing and all of that, there were way more like one skein fingering weight shawls, and they were kind of small, and everyone was knitting them, and I have quite a lot of them. But now when I wear a shawl, I want like a huge schlanket kind of thing. So I have been debating on what to do with those for a while, and in the end I decided some of them I have worn for years and a lot of love has gone into them, but maybe it's just time to let them go. But then I figured, well, or I could unravel. And so far I've only unraveled one. So this is why I will never knit through my stash, because instead of knitting through my stash, I recycle yarn and add it back into my stash. But this was a very, very special skein of yarn. This is a skein of Wollmeise blend, which is their cashmere blend. I have no idea about the colorway. And this was very, very special because I remember buying this when we first visited Wollmeise about 3.5 years ago. So I had just gotten my first postgraduate job, like my first real job that wasn't like a student job on the side, and I treated myself to this one skein of fancy cashmere yarn, and I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm kind of spoiled now, and I mean, we are both working full time right now. That's going to change. But so it's kind of for now, like my yarn habits are pretty good. But back then, I remember it was very, very special to spend that kind of money on a skein of yarn, and I really fell in love with this color. And then I knitted into a cowl. I think it was a Hohi Locatelli pattern, and I never wear cowls. So I finished this thing. I remember finishing it, and I never wore it. Not once. So I decided that I just can't give that away. So instead, I unraveled it. I haven't washed it yet. I'm not sure if I will. Maybe I'll just leave it like that, and I will knit it up into something else one day. But yes, I did play a bit of yarn rescue because while I'm okay with letting some stuff go and some things are just not my taste anymore, this I still, I think, had like 125 grams of yarn. I'm not sure where the other 25 grams were left when I first finished knitting it, but it's still a substantial amount of yarn, so I think I will re-knit this into something someday. Who knows? So that's kind of my yarn purging and shawl purging, and I'm feeling really good about it because, again, some of those shawls I have worn for so many years, and now I have only the ones left that are really, really special to me, and I can be more thoughtful in terms of what I want to add to my shawl collection in the future. And I mean, times have changed and my style has changed, and it's been 5 years since I did some of those, so I think it's only natural to maybe adjust the wardrobe a little bit. But yeah, that is the story behind how I am refilling my stash rather than using it. But that's a good thing. So let's talk about spinning. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a little bit all over today, but who knows? Maybe I need more coffee. I mean, I constantly need more coffee, but I'm telling myself I can only have one a day, so that makes it very hard. And now my neighbors are outside and I look like a fool because I'm talking to a camera. Let's just pretend to be normal for a second. Alright, so I have been spinning. I started this spin about 2 weeks ago. And this is some fiber that I got in a club from Hilltop Cloud, I believe. Let's just talk about it. So yes, so Hilltop Cloud is I think she mainly focuses on dyeing and prepping fiber in the UK, and I was part of the Travelers Club for a couple of months last year, and you basically get some yarn shipped, some fiber shipped to you every month. And yeah, I did it for a couple of months because Katie's fiber prep is just amazing. So this was all blended fiber, and I do quite like working with blended fiber because unlike when it's dyed, there is just less felting, and again, her fibers are always just stunningly prepped. So I did this for a couple of months, and eventually I stopped just because the colors weren't really my personal style, which is not to say they weren't beautiful. I mean, you have seen me knit and spin over the years, and I kind of have very specific tastes. But I decided to spin some of this stuff up. So this is the September 2019 club, and it is fiber that is 25% llama, 25% merino, 45% South American wool, and 5% viscose tweed neps. So I thought that was a really, really interesting blend. I can actually show it to you. So this is about all I have left of the 200 grams that I got from this fiber. And now it is up in my nose, which wasn't a very smart idea. So anyways, I decided to spin it up, spin it onto 2 bobbins, and then do like a 2-ply yarn. And this may become something for baby boy eventually, who knows. So the first bobbin is finished. And it was really, really fun. I don't spin tweedy things very often. So if you have been watching for a while, you know that if I do spin, I try to spin very evenly. I like I don't want to say perfect sort of yarns, but I like to spin very consistent and almost, I don't want to say commercial spun things, but I like the look of yarn that is very evenly spun rather than like crazy thick and thin, art yarn, anything like that. So these tweed neps, they were kind of a challenge to me because you can't spin that perfectly fine. Sorry, I told you I had fiber up my nose. So with these like tweedy bits, they just kind of appear and you just have to kind of let go and let the yarn do its thing. So this has been kind of challenging to my perfectionist spinner self, but also quite fun. And I'm almost done with the second bobbin, and once I'm done with that, I think I'm just going to apply them together. I would say I'm aiming for like a Sport 2 DK weight yarn. I'm considering twisting it quite a bit. So possibly more like a TK weight yarn. I have 200 grams of it, so it should be enough to make something fun. And yeah, I'm really curious to see how this will look once it's done. Again, it's very different to what I usually do. I thought about chain plying it for a while, mainly because I didn't want to worry about splitting it into 2 bobbins. But chain plying yarn kind of enhances the unevenness of your spinning, whereas 2 plying a yarn kind of evens it all out. So considering that this is already a tiny bit of a uneven spin, I am going for a 2-ply, and I think it's going to be really, really fun. I think this is my first time spinning with llama, and to be honest, the fiber was just so well prepped. It worked right away. I really enjoyed it. It's a really nice blend. It's very soft. I would actually like to spin with this blend without the neps because it's just a very beautiful, almost bluish gray color, and I'm really enjoying the parts that don't have any tweedy neps in it as well. But yeah, that's what I've been working on. And part of why I've been spinning more again is because I have a new spinning setup. So you may know that I right now exclusively spin on my Ashford eSpinner 3. So it's a modern wheel that doesn't have any treadling. And I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with it. I've had it for exactly a year now, and I've played with the idea of selling it, and there's nothing really wrong with it except the brake band kind of being annoying. But I never really 100% fell in love with it as much as I did with my Bliss wheel, which I have sold, I think, just before Christmas last year. But I have been shifting around my entire furniture in my living room because this is a long story. I've been having troubles with my back again, and it's been so annoying, and it kind of got to the point where I couldn't find any position to sit or stand or do anything anymore. So I've been shifting things around and trying to make my back work, and part of that was stealing our one ergonomic chair, which is our desk chair that usually Kai is using right now. But I stole that off him, and so now my living room has my desk chair in it, and I also got myself one of those exercise balls, like a bouncy ball, to sit on. And I have realized that with those, I sit a bit higher when I spin on my e-spinner when it's on my couch table, and it's actually really comfortable and enjoyable to spin. So now I'm enjoying my e-spinner a lot more, even though nothing has changed. And I'm spinning more, so it's really, really fun. And sometimes I find it easier to spin for my back than to be knitting because you're always kind of looking down, and it's not the best posture to have anyways. So yeah, I've been spinning a bit more and I'm really enjoying it. I don't actually have a ton of fiber anymore, and I don't want to add any fiber to my stash before we move. But I have some sort of spinning and fibery ideas that I want to at some point realize. I have no idea when that will be. I'm still dreaming of buying a flat iron wheel once we do eventually move permanently. But then I'll have a baby, so who knows? It may be a while until I fulfill all my spinning dreams, but right now I'm really enjoying spinning. I am rewatching and catching up on Rachel's spinning podcast, which is the Wool and Spinning podcast. It's a very sort of technical spinning podcast, and I've really enjoyed it, and lately I just haven't had the time to follow her episodes anymore, so I've been catching up on those while spinning away, and it's been really, really fun. So yeah, that is pretty much what I've been doing. I've been knitting, I've been spinning, I've done a little bit of work on my blankets, but nothing major that kind of justifies showing it to you. Like I said, we had a public holiday yesterday and today is Friday, so we're basically going from what felt like a weekend into another weekend, which is great. Work has been slow, which is also great. And like I mentioned, things are just kind of loosening up here in terms of lockdown, which is quite enjoyable. And don't worry, we are still being very, very safe. And I'm probably already overcautious, but it is just nice to have the opportunity to spend a bit more time outside. And yeah, I hate the word new normal. Like everyone is talking about this new normal, and I hate the new normal. But I will admit that it is kind of all coming together and becoming a bit more normal, as much as I hate to say that. So that's been really, really great. And yeah, it feels like after this bubble of lockdown, coronavirus, isolation that everyone has been in, things are calming down, at least here in Germany, which I think we are very, very lucky in terms of our situation here right now. But of course, wherever you are, I do hope that you are keeping safe and that you and your loved ones are healthy. I don't in any way mean to play down the current situation. I hope you know that. But of course, I also try to keep this podcast somewhat positive and help us all kind of take our mind off all these huge problems right now and just enjoy some knitting content. So I really hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I will be back with you next week. And until then, I hope you have a lot of fun with your knitting, crafting, crochet, spinning, whatever you do. I hope it brings you some joy, and I will see you very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!